Younger people have the greatest delays in even initiating care. We say it's worse to be a woman and it's worse to be a young woman. It's also worse to be a young Black woman.
She kept whispering it over and over in the waiting room. I feel like I'm dying. They're going to let me die here. Her words weren't dramatics, they were prophecy, because just 4 hours later she would be gone. But how does a young mother just 25 years old walk into an ER asking for help and never walk out alive? Was her death inevitable, or did a system built to heal her fail her instead on the night of January 2nd, 2023? Milwaukee daycare teacher Shauna Ward entered Frater Hospital's emergency room. She complained of crushing chest pain and shortness of breath, classic red flags for a cardiac emergency, but instead of urgent treatment, she was told to wait and wait and wait for over 4 hours. She posted her frustration on Facebook, warning that she was being ignored. Her final post would be her last cry for help. By the time staff finally responded, Shauna had collapsed. This is the story of a young woman who lit up every room she entered, but whose final hours expose one of the darkest failures of modern healthcare. Shauna was born May 15, 1997 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was known as the life of the party, but also as a caretaker. The type of person who noticed when someone else was hurting. By 25, she had become a beloved daycare teacher, a mother of 2 and a pillar in her community. She poured her love into children, both her own and those in her classroom, creating safe spaces filled with laughter, curiosity, and compassion. Shauna's life was just beginning, but her promising future was about to be stolen in the most preventable way imaginable at 6:45 p.m. on January 2nd. Shauna checked into the ER. She expected answers. Instead, she found a waiting room so overcrowded that patients became invisible. At first, she was hopeful, even joking on Facebook about the long wait, but by 7:30 her tone shifted. She wrote that she might have been better off going to another hospital by 9. Her posts grew darker. She described feeling worse, ignored, and terrified. Then silence, around 10:45 p.m. Shauna collapsed in the parking lot while trying to leave for another hospital. Doctors finally rushed to help, but it was too late. An autopsy later revealed Shauna had cardiomegaly, an enlarged heart, a dangerous but treatable condition that requires immediate intervention. Records show that an X-ray had already revealed the abnormality. Yet no one acted. Experts point out a disturbing pattern. Women, especially Black women, are far more likely to have their pain minimized or misdiagnosed. Instead of seeing a cardiac emergency, staff reportedly assumed stress or anxiety. That fatal assumption cost Shauna her life. Her mother later said, "If they would have taken her straight back when she complained of chest pain and shortness of breath, my daughter would still be here." The family refused to accept condolences as enough. They demanded accountability, not just for Shauna, but for every other patient left unseen in overcrowded ERs. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to appreciate every single one of you watching. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment, and share it with others. Your support helps us keep telling these powerful, untold stories. Now let's get back to the story. On the night of January 2nd, 2023, Milwaukee daycare teacher Shauna Ward walked into Frater Hospital's emergency room. She was only 35 years old, a devoted mother, a sister, a daughter, and a woman loved deeply by her community. She had spent her life caring for children, not just her own, but dozens of others whose parents trusted her. Warm smile and patient hands, Shauna had always been the type to put others before herself. A woman who lit up every space she entered with her laughter, her kindness, and her unshakable spirit. She had dreams far bigger than her circumstances. She often spoke about opening her own daycare center, one that would feel more like a family than a business. Her Facebook page was filled with joyful posts about her kids, her work, and her faith. The people who knew her described her as selfless, driven, and full of love. But on that cold January night, her life and her future came crashing into the reality of a broken healthcare system. She complained of crushing chest pain and shortness of breath, both classic red flags for a cardiac emergency, but instead of urgent treatment, she was told to wait and wait and wait for more than 4 hours. She sat in the waiting room posting her frustration online, warning friends and family that she was being ignored. Her final post would be her last desperate cry for help. By the time hospital staff finally responded, Shauna had already collapsed. Her voice silenced her dreams stolen. This was not just a medical emergency. Mishandled, it was the story of a vibrant young woman failed at the very moment she needed help the most. Her final hours now stand as a haunting reminder of what happens when cries for help go unanswered, and when a life filled with promise is cut short, not by fate, but by neglect. Shauna Ward was born May 15, 1997, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From childhood, she was known as the life of the party, the one who could make everyone laugh. But she was also the quiet caretaker, the one who noticed when someone else was hurting and made sure no one ever felt left out. By the age of 25. She had become a beloved daycare teacher, a devoted mother of 2, and a pillar in her community. Every child who walked into her classroom felt safe, seen, and loved. She poured her entire heart into building spaces filled with laughter, curiosity, and compassion. Her friends described her as selfless. Her family saw her as the glue that held everyone together, and her future was just beginning. But it was stolen in the most preventable way. At 6:45 p.m. on January 2nd, 2023, Shauna walked into Freighter Hospital's emergency room, clutching her chest. She expected help. She expected answers. Instead, she was handed a wristband, told to sit and wait. The waiting room was so overcrowded that patients blended into the walls and suffering became background noise. At first, Shauna tried to stay positive. She pulled out her phone and posted on Facebook, joking lightly about the endless wait, telling friends she just hoped to be seen soon. But as the minutes stretched into hours, her hope began to fade by 7:30. Her words carried a sharper edge. She typed that maybe she should have gone to another hospital because no one here seemed to care. By 9 o'clock, her tone had shifted completely. Her posts turned dark. She said she felt worse, she felt ignored, she felt terrified. She whispered to her family on the phone that she didn't think she would make it through the night. Then silence. No more updates, no more messages, no more calls back. Shauna, who had always been the loudest voice in the room, the one who made others laugh, was suddenly voiceless, sitting in a chair in a crowded ER, unseen, unheard, and slowly dying. An autopsy later revealed that Shauna had cardiomegaly, an enlarged heart, a serious but treatable condition that becomes deadly when ignored. It was not hidden. It was not impossible to detect. Records later showed that an X-ray taken during her wait,
I believe if they would have took her straight to the back right after when she notified them of her heart problems and the shortness of breath, Shauna would still be here with us.
already revealed the abnormality. Yet no one acted, no rush, no urgency, no intervention. What makes this more devastating is that chest pain and shortness of breath are considered textbook red flags for a cardiac emergency. Any medical student knows it. Any triage nurse is trained to flag it. But in Shauna's case, the warning signs were brushed aside. Instead of being treated like a young woman in the middle of a crisis, she was treated like someone exaggerating her pain.
It is sad that Shauna Ward could go to a hospital in her community and not be validated and not be seen and not be recognized as having something severe enough that she could die if she left, and they let her leave the hospital and she died.
Experts say this happens far too often, especially to women, and even more so to Black women. Studies prove that their symptoms are dismissed, minimized, or mislabeled as stress, anxiety, or overreaction, and that bias can mean the difference between life and death. Shauna did not need hours of waiting. She needed immediate monitoring, blood work, and EKG and intervention. Cardiomegaly is dangerous, but with the right treatment, people survive. Instead, she was left sitting in a crowded room posting on Facebook as her body struggled against itself. A simple decision to act sooner could have saved her life, but the system built to heal her failed her in the most preventable way imaginable. Her mother's voice shook with anger and grief when she spoke to reporters. She said if they would have taken her straight back when she complained of chest pain and shortness of breath, my daughter would still be here to her. It was not a mystery. It was not fate. It was a failure that stole a young mother from her children and a daughter from her family. The pain of knowing Shauna begged for help in real time while posting her fear on social media only to collapse before anyone took her seriously left the family shattered. They refused to accept condolences as enough flowers and apologies could not heal. What negligence had broken? Instead, they demanded accountability. They demanded answers. They demanded change, not just for Shauna, but for every other patient who has sat in a waiting room unseen, unheard, and untreated. Her family began speaking publicly about her case, telling anyone who would listen that hospitals cannot be allowed to normalize delays that kill. They wanted her name attached not only to tragedy, but to reform. They pushed for investigations into overcrowded emergency rooms, into racial disparities in healthcare, into why the cries of a young black woman could echo for hours without a response. Shauna's loved ones were clear. They would not let her death be written off as another sad story. They would fight until it forced people to pay attention, until her case was proof that silence and waiting can be deadly. Shauna's story was not an isolated case. It was part of a disturbing pattern that stretches across the United States and beyond. Black women consistently suffer some of the highest rates of preventable death in modern healthcare. Studies have shown that black women are 22% more likely to die from heart disease than white women, 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth complications, and on average, black patients wait 16 minutes longer in emergency rooms than white patients. And those numbers are not just statistics. They are mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends who walk into hospitals seeking help, but never walk out alive. Experts say implicit bias is one of the biggest factors when black women report pain. It is too often dismissed as exaggeration when they express fear. It is brushed off as anxiety when they describe symptoms that should trigger alarms. Those symptoms are minimized until it is too late. What happened to Shauna highlights how systemic inequality in medicine does not always appear as overt racism, but as delay, dismissal, and disbelief. The cost is measured in lives that could have been saved. The truth is every minute of waiting, every ignored complaint, every assumption of
I think she actually started saying that she felt like she was dying in the waiting room outside, but she kept saying it more and more. She said, I feel like I'm dying. They're going to let me die here. And I just told her, like, no, that's why I got you in the hospital.
Stress over serious illness builds a deadly divide that people like Shauna are forced to pay for with their lives. Shauna's tragedy was not unique. It echoed another devastating case that unfolded hundreds of miles away in Nova Scotia. In December 2022, 37-year-old Allison Holoff walked into an emergency room complaining of severe jaw pain, dizziness, and nausea. She told staff over and over that something was wrong. She felt like she was dying, but she was left waiting for more than 7 hours in a crowded hallway. Her cries for help were brushed aside, her symptoms minimized by the time anyone rushed to her aid. It was already too late. She collapsed and never recovered her story, sent shockwaves through Canada just as Shauna's death would haunt Milwaukee. 2 different women, 2 different countries, 2 different healthcare systems, but the same fatal pattern. Both of them raised red flags. Both of them made it clear they were in crisis. Both of them begged for help. Both of them were dismissed until their voices went silent. Different places, same failure. Shauna's death sent ripples of grief through her community. The children at her daycare, too young to fully understand why their teacher was gone, held small memorials drawing pictures and leaving notes that said they missed her laughter and hugs. Parents spoke about how she treated every child as her own, creating a space where kids felt safe, loved, and free to grow. Her friends described her as someone who always gave more than she received. The person who would answer a midnight call or show up unasked just to make sure you were okay. Losing her felt like losing the heartbeat of their circle. Her funeral overflowed with people standing shoulder to shoulder, unable to fit inside the
Reform
church.
and the
The
importance
sound
of
of crying
advocating for
children
oneself
mingled with
in
the
the medical
sobs of
system.
adults who could not
Studies show that
understand
Black
how someone
patients
so full of life
such as
had
Ward
been left to
are getting
die
the
in a
same quality
waiting
of
room.
healthcare as whites. Absolutely. According to a study by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, Black patients wait for an average of 69 minutes in emergency rooms, while white patients wait 53 minutes.
But grief quickly transformed into advocacy. Her family refused to let her name fade into silence. They spoke to reporters, held vigils, and demanded change. They said no other daughter, no other mother, no other sister should have to sit in pain, begging for help that never comes. Community leaders joined the call, pressing for hospitals to address racial disparities in treatment, to fix broken triage systems, and to ensure that voices like Shauna's would never again be ignored. Her story became not only a tragedy but a rallying cry, a reminder that behind every statistic is a life cut short and a community left to pick up the pieces. Shauna's death raises questions that none of us can afford to ignore. How many more lives will be lost to delays, dismissals, and neglect?
Ward gathered here at New Pitt's mortuary to say goodbye one last time. But as they grieve, they still have questions about the moments leading up to their loved one's death.
How many more mothers have to whisper that they feel like they are dying before anyone takes them seriously? And why in 2023 is the pain of a young Black woman still invisible inside an emergency room? Her last words, "I feel like I'm dying," were not just a warning. They were a prophecy and an indictment of a system that too often listens only when it is already too late. So I leave you with this. If Shauna had walked into that or as someone else, if her skin color, her age, or her background had been different, would we even be telling this story today? Or would she still be alive, raising her children, teaching her students, and filling her community with joy? I want to hear what you think in the comments, because these are not abstract issues. They are life and death realities, and the more we talk about them, the harder it becomes for the system to ignore. And if you believe Shauna's story deserves to be heard, if you believe no other family should have to bury their daughter, because her cries for help went unanswered, then please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel reach more people and bring more of these untold stories to light.